Shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game.
The WNBA just got a painful reality check, and it spelled no Caitlin Clark. Ratings are dropping faster than a team coached by Stephanie White in crunch time. One groin injury, and suddenly the historic growth narrative feels more like a bad marketing slogan. The question is, can this league survive without its biggest draw for even a month? What's your take? Do fans really tune in for the other stars when Clark isn't on the court?
And that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad. We're talking about down in unrivaled territory.
Here's the reality. The league had one magic formula for big TV numbers this year: Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. That was it. Their cash cow matchup. Chicago Sky against Indiana Fever. You didn't need a room full of marketing geniuses to see it coming. Just put two of the most recognizable names in the game on the same court 5 times in one season.
Struggling to maintain interest. Now, in fairness to the dump, the ratings I'm about to share with you guys, they're not bad. Matter of fact, some of them are actually good, at least when compared to what this dump used to draw, which was nothing. But the reason I think the WNBA is in trouble has less to do with these ratings and more to do with what I think is coming.
The problem is simple. When you don't protect your stars, they don't stick around. Clark's been sidelined for a month and a day with a groin injury, the soft tissue kind that demands real recovery time, not a tape-it-up-and-play approach. Reese has been out for the last week and a half. So this past Saturday, the WNBA's so-called golden matchup had neither of its golden ticket players on the floor. The result? Lowest ratings these two teams have seen since Caitlin Clark entered the league. Not just lower than average rock bottom. We couldn't even match last year's numbers. Out of sight, out of mind. Let's walk through the numbers, because they tell the whole story. First meeting this year, huge. 2.7 million average viewers on ABC, peaking at 3.1 million, up 115% from last year's ABC season average. Perfect storm, Clark's foul controversy, her triple-double, the Sky getting blown out, the infamous investigation, all from that game. Second meeting, still strong, but a step down. Prime time, CBS, 8 p.m. slot. 1.92 million viewers, still one of the most-watched WNBA regular season games since 2001, and the 8th biggest in over 20 years. That's the power of having both stars on the floor, or at least the promise of it. Then came the third meeting on ABC, and the drop-off turned ugly, from 2.7 million to 1.9 million, then down to 1.5 million. That's 1.22 million people deciding, nah, I'm good, and not coming back for round 3. And remember that 1.5 million average was still with Clark playing. It was also the lowest Fever Sky rating since last year's 1.53 million. Now, fast forward to this past Saturday. Same primetime slot, same network, CBS, same matchup, and they didn't even crack 1.4 million. Try 1.3 million. Over 500,000 viewers basically said, without Clark? Pass. From May 22nd to August 10th, this marquee matchup has lost 1.4 million viewers. That's not a seasonal dip, that's a TV freefall. Networks hate that trend. Advertisers hate that trend. And I guarantee you Kathy Engelbert hates that trend. Because here's the reality. Without Clark, the Fever's national interest evaporates. Fans aren't tuning in for Kelsey Mitchell isolation plays. They're not clearing their weekend schedule for Lexi Hull. And they're definitely not showing up for the officiating circus we get every game.
regular season. And the craziest thing about this last groin injury with Caitlin Clark is how it's been covered. The day after she had the groin injury, she was listed as day-to-day. And then a couple weeks after that, then she was listed to being out indefinitely. Now, ESPN had August 12th as the circled return date for Caitlin Clark to get back onto the court. And just yesterday, she was listed as a game time decision for today's game against the Dallas Wings. And then after practice yesterday, Coach Stephanie White basically came out and said, like, no, Caitlin Clark hasn't even been practicing. So they changed it from a game time decision to her being out.
So, what happens? The WNBA gets desperate. You start hearing the whispers. Hey, Fever, can you tease a Caitlin Clark return? Just dangle it in front of the fans. Give us something to bump these numbers back up. It's a play straight out of the PR Desperation Handbook. String the audience along without actually delivering.
And I get it to a certain extent. The fans, the media does not need to know every little thing that's going on with Caitlin Clark's injuries, especially a star player like that. We will never know all the information, nor should we know all the information, and that's actually good for Caitlin. It protects her for when she does come back on the court. She can't be targeted. Teams can't use a certain injury or ailment against her if people don't really know what is going on. But the reporting of her timeline in general, there has been no rhyme or reason to what has been shared about it. To put her as a game time decision for today's game, and then Coach Stephanie White basically coming out and saying she has done no practicing with the team, that's crazy. And I brought it up in my video yesterday.
But here's the catch. Clark's injury isn't one you rush back from unless you want to risk a chronic re-tear.
Back in the mix when all of these teams are at peak condition, and we already know what happens when Caitlin Clark gets back out on the court. Teams play defense on her differently. They play extra physical with her. There's all of these different factors that come into play. That's why I'm sort of leaning to the point of maybe Caitlin should be out for the rest of the season. Maybe this season is just done for her. Maybe it doesn't make sense for her to come back into the mix if the Fever aren't contenders. Are the Fever contenders at this point? I'm just not so sure. Do you risk another injury that can again compound and turn into something else?
And here's the catch. Clark's injury isn't one you rush back from unless you want to risk a chronic re-tear. You'd think a league that depends on her for this much of its TV relevance would, actually protect her in the first place. But no, this is what happens when you allow constant targeting, inconsistent whistles, and officiating that treats your biggest draw like she's a rookie walk-on at an open gym. And if you think this only affects Fever games, think again. Let's check the numbers for other games without Clark. Sun vs. Liberty, 180,000 viewers. Dream vs. Mercury, 160,000. If growth was as massive as the League and Players Association keep claiming, those NBA TV numbers would be at least 300,000, minimum 250,000. But they're not even hitting 200K without the Caitlin Clark stimulus package. Because that's what this really is. A stimulus package for the entire league. Clark plays, numbers spike. Clark sits, numbers crater. And the WNBA has banked on her so heavily that without her, they look exposed. It's not like the league didn't see this coming. The warning signs were there from day one. You've got your most valuable player in terms of marketability and ratings taking harder hits than most NFL wide receivers and getting fewer calls than a telemarketer in airplane mode. Landing space violations ignored. Arm grabs on drives ignored. Clear hacks at the rim. Play on. Now ask yourself, if Clark had the same whistle Paige Buchers gets, would she still be playing right now? I'd say yes. The Fever would probably be a top 3 seed, and you wouldn't have this ratings death spiral happening in August. But instead, here we are, the bubble might be bursting. Owners are seeing the charts, and the drop is so obvious you don't need an MBA to understand it. From 3.1 million peaks to 1.3 million, and NBA TV games struggling to break 200K, the trajectory is straight down without the one player the league should be protecting at all costs. And here's the real kicker. This isn't just about the present. Every week Clark is out, casual fans find something else to watch. They break the habit of tuning in. And once you lose that habit, good luck getting it back, especially when the alternative is watching teams full of stars the casual audience couldn't name if you spotted them the first and last names. The league's marketing is basically Caitlin Clark and other people, and the second half of that sentence isn't pulling viewers. Here's the dangerous part for the WNBA. TV networks don't have patience for, wait until our star is healthy. ESPN, CBS, ABC, they pay for consistent numbers, not only good when our top draw is active. When they see 1 million-plus viewers vanish the moment Clark's not in uniform, they start rethinking how many games they want to commit to next year. Because if you're a network executive, you're not putting money into a product that collapses every time one player misses time. That's not sustainable, and it doesn't give you leverage in the next TV deal. The owners know it. The league knows it. And instead of fixing the problem at the root, protecting the star who props up the whole thing, they're out here dangling fake, game-time decision updates to squeeze out a temporary ratings bump. Let's be honest, we've all seen this trick before. In sports, game-time decision often means, we know they're not playing, but maybe you'll buy a ticket or tune in just in case. And it works, once, maybe twice. After that, fans catch on. They stop believing you. And nothing kills ratings faster than fans thinking you're just running a con for attention.
Not be thrown back into any mix if she doesn't have significant practices under her belt before she goes into game speed. You can try to simulate game speed as much as you want in practice. You will never be able to. Game speed is game speed. There's also a lot more adrenaline, all of these different things pumping when you're playing in front of a sold out crowd that the Indiana Fever do every single night. If I'm their coach, she needs to practice for at minimum a week. At the minimum, she needs to be doing everything in practice for at least a week before you throw her back in the mix. Now you're going to throw her back in the mix when all of these teams are at peak.
The problem for the WNBA is they've made Caitlin Clark the hook for almost everything this season. Highlights, promos, primetime slots, merchandise pushes, and when the hook's gone, you're left with what? A bunch of teams that draw less than some high school boys' basketball state championships. That's not even an exaggeration. Some of those games crack 250K on local streams. And then there's the league's favorite talking point, growth. Oh, the growth. We've heard it all year. Biggest season ever, record-breaking viewership, merchandise flying off the shelves. And yet here's the reality. Take Clark out of the picture and that growth shrinks faster than a balloon left in the sun. You can't call it league-wide growth when it's really one-player growth. That's like saying the Bulls of the 90s made basketball itself more popular. No, Jordan made basketball more popular. Big difference. Now, here's what the WNBA doesn't want to talk about, the long-term damage. If Clark's out another 2 weeks, that's 2 more weeks of primetime games underperforming and 2 more weeks of casual viewers forming new habits, watching other sports or skipping basketball altogether. You think they'll all come back the moment she's cleared? Some will, sure, but a chunk are gone for good. And the playoffs will be interesting, because if Clark's return doesn't immediately spike numbers back to May levels, what's the excuse then? You can't say, we just need more time. If you've marketed the whole season around her, her comeback should be a ratings jackpot. If it's not, that says something ugly about the league's supposed momentum. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The targeting, the officiating, the let's rough her up because the league won't stop us defense. This groin injury didn't happen in a vacuum. You don't limp for weeks from a harmless bump. You get there by taking constant contact and never getting the whistle that protects you from cumulative damage. If Clark had been officiated like a star from day one, we probably wouldn't even be talking about her missing games. She'd be gearing up for the next Fever Sky meeting, ratings would be back over 2 million, and Kathy Engelbert would be smiling ear to ear in front of every camera she could find. Instead, she's got a product bleeding viewers and a media landscape openly mocking the historic growth storyline. And Angel Reese being out doesn't help. The league lucked into the Clark versus Reese dynamic catching fire with fans, but they didn't protect either player from the grind. Now both are sidelined, and the WNBA's marquee matchup is just 2 middle-of-the-pack teams without their stars, drawing numbers that make network execs call their golf buddies instead of watching the second half. The Fever without Clark aren't just less marketable, they're less competitive. The offense is a mess, spacing is worse, and defenses can key in without worrying about Clark pulling up from 28 feet. That's not fun basketball for casual viewers. They're not tuning in to watch half-court sets die in the corner or turnover fests in the fourth quarter. So what's the fix? Short-term, you milk the possible return angle without making fans hate you. Tease the idea she's close, have her courtside smiling and signing autographs, drop just enough light drill footage to make fans think, maybe next game. That buys you a temporary bump. Long-term, You either fix the officiating and protect your stars or admit the league lives and dies on one player's availability. Because let's be real, this historic growth is built on a fragile foundation. The second Clark's not out there, ratings drop like a rock. That's not growth, that's dependency. And any business that depends entirely on one asset is a bad month away from panic mode. Owners see the numbers, networks see the numbers, advertisers see the numbers. You don't have to be a basketball genius to know that if Clark's absence can tank viewership by over 1 million for your best matchup, you've got a problem bigger than one injury. You've got a product that can't stand on its own. And here's the irony. The WNBA has other skilled, marketable players who could draw more attention if the league promoted them, but they don't get the spotlight. So when Clark's out, there's no backup plan, no second wave of stars to keep casual fans engaged. It's Caitlin Clark or bust. And right now, without her, it's bust. One player's injury has exposed the WNBA's entire business model, and the numbers aren't lying. If they don't fix this dependency problem, networks and fans will move on faster than you can say, growth.